how we define death. What's really death? Based on what information we are able to determine if a person is alive or is dead. So first symptom is that the heart stops to work. Second symptom is the brain not functioning right. The waves that are normally turning the brain to think and to function are not exist. The third symptom is that the cells of the brain does not receive any more oxygen from the lungs of the person, which means no oxygen goes into the brain. That means there's a damage as we speak. Once it happens to the person, there's a damage being created. And the next way to know if the person is dying is moments after we see the body temperature drop. And the last symptom is that after few minutes, once we're going to pinch the person, or we're going to burn him, or we will try to move him, we will see that he does not have any more feelings. The nerve system stopped to work. That means even if we burn a cigarette on his skin, he won't react. At that moment, once we have those 5 different symptoms, we can be sure that this person is completely dead. According to the scientific world, once a person has those 5 symptoms more than 6 minutes, he is considered a permanent death. And if he's going to come back to life, for whatever reason, we're going to see soon how is it possible, most likely there will be a permanent damage to the brain. That means he will lose his memory, he would lose his ability to understand things, and so forth and so on. One of the most famous parapsychologists in the world, his name is Dr. Raymond Moody. Dr. Raymond Moody is a psychiatrist from Virginia University. He interviewed 150 people who died and came back to life, and he published his conclusions in his books, Life After Life, that was translated to 30 different languages. The psychologist Carlos Ossis from the United Union of Psychology interviewed 877 doctors who described testimonies and stories of their patients who died and were able to come back to life, and he published many, many articles and books about it. I'm giving you the world's most famous names in the last 25 years that dealing every day of their life with people who died and were able to come back to life after 6 minutes, which means they were already considered as dead people, and they were able to come back to life and tell a story, and those stories were recorded and were published later on, and we're going to see the conclusion soon. Dr. Kenneth Ring is a professor, psychology professor from Connecticut University. He investigated in a period of 2 years 102 cases of people who died and came back to life, and published his book, The Life in Death. Dr. George Ritchie, the president of the Richmond Medical Academy and the head of the psychiatrist unit in Towers Hospital, he wrote a book, The Return from Tomorrow. And one of the most famous in the entire world, Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross from Detroit, a world-known psychiatrist. She investigated for over 20 years, over 1,000 cases of people who died and were able to come back to life. She published a book about life and death and many other books, and she published many, many important articles about her conclusion. Dr. Maurice Rawlings, a cardiologist from Tennessee University, investigated 300 cases and published a book, Beyond the Point of Death. Dr. Frank Schoonmaker, a head cardiologist in Denver Hospital, over 1,000 cases, and he found in his researches 60% of the people who died and were able to come back to life, they were describing the same stories. More than 60% of the people had mutual stories. what we call today clinical death, which has another name, it's called out-of-body experience, we have to be aware of one thing, that over 30 million people, okay, over 30 million people in the world reported that they died and were able to come back to life. Just in the United States alone, there's more than 8 million people who died and were able to return to life. Okay, so we are seeing that it's not just a rare incident, it happens daily, all over the United States and the world. It happens every day. As we speak, there's always people who are dying and are able to come back to life. What happened to people who died and were able to wake up? Let's see some of the things that they're all saying. They have some mutual elements from the moment that they feel that their soul is exiting the body. There are few mutual elements that repeat in the story of each one of these patients. First, they all describe the soul is flying above the body. They saw their body in a hospital, in the ambulance, in the street, in the bed, no matter where they died. The first thing that happens that they see that they are flying above themselves, above the body. And they were able to see what happens in a hospital around the body in all the period of time that they were out of the body. How do we know they're right? Because when they're going to come back to life, even though they were considered dead for the last 10, 20 minutes, they are going to tell us everything that took place in a room for the last 20 minutes, and even more than that. The next element is that they describe that their soul entered a dark tunnel. On the way out of the body, they are entering a tunnel. What happened later as they're flying inside that tunnel, they're beginning to see a light. In the beginning, the light is not so strong, and later the light will become very, very, very strong. And the way they describe the light is, it's a spiritual light with lots of love, communicated with them, but not in a regular way of speaking, through telepathy, which means through thoughts. They were able to communicate with the light and know what the light are telling them and what they are answering, but not through regular speaking. Some of them reported that after their death, they started to see some of their relatives that died before coming and welcoming them and sending them messages, and they saw them exactly in the same way they look when they were alive in this world. Then they report that they started to see their life in snaps, in fast picture, one after the other, from the moment they were born until the moment they died, all their life in a very short period of time, one picture after the other. And they described that they saw a conclusion of their entire life in sharp and clear pictures, and very fast, one after the other. All of them, with no exception, when they came back to life, they described everything that took place in a room, and better than that. For instance, people who were in the surgery room or in the emergency room, while they consider as complete dead people, later they will tell you everything that took place in the entire hospital. Even though the body was in the first ground level, the first floor, when they came back to life, they were able to tell you what happened in each room, in the entire hospital. If the hospital has 7 floors and many, many rooms, they can tell you in the last 10 minutes in each one of the rooms which doctor did what and said what, and which surgery is taking place in that room, what shoes are in the windows, and who just died 5 minutes ago, and which doctor just signed a death certificate in an office in a hospital, which information